We off and running?
We're ready.
All right, great. Well, hi, Laura. Hi, everybody, whoever's watching. My name is Bryan Reeves, and we have Miss Laura Coe on the apparati. We'll call
Hi,
it.
I'm Laura Code. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. When we first spoke, it was obviously both of us have shared such an incredible journey in our lives to make some pretty eventually unconventional choices. You know, the road less traveled. And so we decided to have this conversation because we realized that a lot of people are in that place of deliberating over whether to take that path of heart that calls to them that might look scary, right?
Absolutely. And I was very excited to talk with you when we first met because um, I feel like this is one of the biggest things that I see out there is, people who are in a position that they aren't sure they should take that leap or try something new. And I think your perspective will be enjoyed by a lot of people.
Well, and I think, and you and I started talking. So, so I'm a blogger, right? I'm a writer, and I'm a former U.S. Air Force captain, which we'll get into that in a second. But I'm a writer, and I blog for websites like the Good Men Project and my own website, This Wild Waking Journey. And you also just wrote a book.
Yeah, so I'm a blogger as well, and I have a site, Emotional Obesity, and I'm writing a book called Emotional Obesity, and it's all about the journey of my own experience leaving corporate America, jumping
Right.
into something unknown.
Right. Yes. And leaving the U.S. Air Force, it's been 13 years now at a young age, 26, and really taking what for me at the time was a really difficult path. Um, but now, having come a long way, like you're leaving the corporate world. You've just written this book, Emotional Obesity, which we'll talk about, and I've just been on just an extraordinary journey myself, and I'm now a coach and an author and a writer, and I'm doing relationship coaching, and I'm just like really having the time of my life in a way. But we want to share with people. We want to talk about that kind of that leap, right? That experience of
Yes,
leaping, of
yeah,
getting out of that comfort zone where I was miserable. I'll just say, I'm just going to put it right out there. I was miserable.
absolutely. I was in a healthcare tech company. I had been a philosophy undergrad graduate student, and somehow I woke up one day as a health tech entrepreneur, and I don't even know how I got there, but I spent 15 years there, and I was absolutely miserable. So figuring out, what the process was that allowed me to get into that place and making that leap out. And I am now so much enjoying everything I do. I too am a coach, and I'm writing about this every day and working with people in the same predicament. And I am so much happier. And so I think it's a great subject to talk about.
Yeah, so what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the biggest challenges. Well, first we're going to talk about how did we even get into that place? Like
Yeah,
how did we get into a life that we didn't really connect with? How
yeah.
did we find ourselves so embedded in a life that didn't really thrill us, right? And then we're going to talk about some of the challenges that we faced, right, when we were talking about when leaving that it's a comfortable place to some degree, right? Materially comfortable. And there's a lot of other things, but we'll talk about some of the challenges that we had when to leaving. We'll talk about the thing or things that finally pushed us out or shot us out like a slingshot in my case.
Yeah,
We'll talk about did we regret it?
yeah.
We'll talk about so what happened after that and the time since, and we're going to talk about just a lot of the things that we went through after leaving, what we learned about ourselves, and then I think most importantly we'll also just share what would we say to somebody who's still in that place, or maybe they've just left. Like what could we offer to people? For me, I left 13 years ago. It's been a 13-year journey, and gosh, if I could tell that guy 13 years ago the things that I know now, I'm not sure he would leave.
That's not what I thought you were going to say.
That's not true. He had no choice. He had to leave. He would have died in that place.
Yeah.
But I laugh so much more now in my life than I did then. Like
Yeah.
I have laughter
Yeah.
now because of my choices. It hasn't been easy, but I love what I do in the world. I love how I show up. I love the people that I get to hang out with, and had I not left that place of comfort and security and all, I would have just withered indefinitely.
Absolutely. And I think that's the big question is, right, what you leave these really comfortable positions in the military and in my case, corporate America and entrepreneurship. And there's a lot of benefits that came with that, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
be real. It's like I was making a lot of money at the time I left. I had a stock option pool that was vesting. I mean, I could look at it every day and see the numbers ratchet up year over year. And you're just
Right.
thinking, who leaves that, right? Who leaves that
Right.
for endless uncertainty, right? And
Right. Yeah.
following some sense that you are going to have some joy in your life, like you're talking about. But I mean, if you ask me now, it's not even a close call, right? There's just no question that, like, the happiness I feel, the contentment, the ease of my life, the way in which things just feel like it's still hard, but it's there's no dread, there's
Yeah.
no heaviness anymore.
Yeah. Well, so let's touch briefly on how we got there.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to start because it's pretty simple for me. You know, I was 14 when I saw the movie Top Gun, and I wanted to fly jets and ride motorcycles and sleep with, well, at least make out with I didn't really know much about sleeping with anybody, but I wanted to make out with Kelly McGillis,
All right.
and I didn't do any of those things when I got into the military. But they gave me a scholarship to college. They paid for my school, and I was a kid. I mean, I was 16 years old, pretty much 16 or 17 when I signed papers that basically decided the next 10 years of my life. And what a time of change and growth and evolution and transformation. And yet here I am locked into wearing a military uniform. So, I went through a real renaissance when I went to university. But because the military was paying my way, and it was kind of, I didn't know what else to do. I mean, it was kind of the path of least resistance at that point, and I just kind of went with it. But the next thing I know, I'm 21 years old, a lieutenant in the Air Force, living in Oklahoma City, doing work that I just loathed. I was in this giant government building. It was literally a mile long, and it had like 4 windows. It was a sea of cubicles as far as you literally stand on your chair, and you can just see cubicles for forever.
Yeah.
And that's where I was as a 21-year-old kid, right out of university. That was the world that I got thrown into in Oklahoma City. And I think one day, I think I cried one day driving to work because I was so,
Yeah.
so miserable.
Yeah.
And, and I stayed. I mean, I was in that kind of environment for the next few years. I went to NASA. I transferred out of there, got down to Florida, and worked at Kennedy Space Center, which was a much prettier environment, but I still felt completely out of alignment with the work I was doing. I just knew I wasn't on this planet to be a military soldier.
And when you say out of alignment, what did that mean for you? Does it feel in your body, or how did you
That's
experience
a
that?
right. Great question. Great question. How did I feel? Everything felt heavy to me. The
Yeah.
whole experience. And I had money. I
Yeah.
had money. I had things. I had prestige. Because then I was a lieutenant. Then I was a captain in the world's most powerful air force. Like I had everything that a young 20-year-old kid could want. I had it all.
Yeah.
At least all that I figured I could ever want. And I felt heavy. I couldn't enjoy it. I did not enjoy going to work every morning. There was no thrill, even at the launch site for satellites and rocket ships. I couldn't. So out of alignment meant my whole being felt heavy around the experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this word heavy is the one that comes up a lot, which inspired um, the book I am writing about, emotional weight, because I really do think that when you're in the wrong place, it does feel really heavy. And it's not that your job was wrong or right,
Right,
right?
right.
Because somebody
Absolutely.
there is loving it.
Absolutely.
It just wasn't right for you.
Absolutely. And how was your experience then when you were?
Yeah, so I didn't sign up as much as I was a philosophy undergrad and graduate student, and I couldn't figure out how to make this passion of mine work because I didn't want to be a professor. So I came back through Chicago, and I have an old school father who looked at me and was like, "You're not sitting around in my house." So he was starting a small healthcare tech company, and I thought, like, that's the last thing I want to do, but I didn't have an option. So I went down there thinking it was a really short term plan. And then I sold myself into this idea that, I was 24 and I thought, well, by the time I'm 30, my brother and I were working together, we'll make a ton of money, and then I'll get to go do what I really want with my life.
Mm,
And I made a deal with the devil, basically, right? And
mm,
I figured out a way to make it okay.
mm.
I didn't hate my job. My friends who found out that I became a healthcare technology entrepreneur were like, "What? What?" They just could not comprehend how I
Uh,
had gone from who they knew me to be to this. And I had sold myself on it. No, this is, I get to work for myself, and I had these answers that I had really crafted to make peace with this decision. But I went into an office every day, and I kept trying to change the color of my office and do all sorts of
mm,
things to just make it feel better. But
yeah.
like you said, there was a heaviness to everything, and my feet never touched the ground. It never felt
Mm,
like me. I felt like I was in somebody else's life.
mm,
My brother was meant to do this, and I would try to follow his cues. He would talk a certain way and walk a certain way and meet the banker a certain way. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna do this. And over time, it worked, which is probably the worst thing. So 15 years later, I had so disconnected from my feelings because I had really sold myself on this identity.
mhm,
And I had a lot of anxiety. I couldn't sleep well. I sort of dreaded going to the office all the time. And I knew I had to get out. But at that point, I had gotten so disconnected from what I wanted in my life that I couldn't
mm.
even think
Yeah.
about what that meant. So it dragged out for a long time.
That's a big one. You just said two things right there, actually, that are so, I think, so impactful. One, that thing about identity.
Yeah.
When I finally left the military, I actually had a nervous breakdown in a phone booth in Wales because I was useless to the world at that point. Like you, the other thing that you said was I didn't know what else to do. I was so disconnected from my true core, whatever that was. It's like, I see this a lot in people that I coach with that may have businesses, their own businesses, multiple homes, a lot of money, families, everything,
Yeah.
but they've been walking a path. Here's the life that they've always wanted to live is here, but they've been walking a path slowly where they're living a life that the disconnect is so huge
Yeah.
that they don't even remember what that was. They're so like, so,
That
you
was
know,
me.
that was me too.
Yeah.
And I wandered the planet for a few years because I didn't know what the hell to do with myself. And I literally had a nervous breakdown in a phone booth in Wales because I had no identity. Who am I now?
Yeah.
I'm not a military captain anymore. Holy goodness. What value do I have anymore?
Yeah. No, that's exactly. I love the way you just said that. I'm not a military captain anymore, right? I left my job and I spent a year. I'm a mom and I had a 3-year-old at that point. And I'd meet other moms at school and they'd say, "Well, what do you do?" And I'd say, "Well, I owned a company. I was a health tech entrepreneur." And I would give my old answer because I didn't have an identity.
Hmm.
I didn't know how to
Right.
talk about
Yeah.
myself. And one day it dawned on me, I got to own at least that I'm staying home with my son. So I started saying, "I'm a stay at home mom." And I was trying
Hmm.
that out, to see how that felt. But it was just like, I had all this judgment about what that
Yeah.
even meant. That,
Right. Yeah.
it's not okay
Yeah.
not to have a job. So
Ugh.
it's a struggle to layer back in yourself when you disconnect that deeply.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was fascinating how much I wanted the military off of me, like get off of me. And yet when people asked me, "Oh, well, what do you do or who are you?" I went right back to, "I
Yeah.
am a military captain," even though I wasn't anymore. You know,
Right.
it was
And
amazing.
did you find, because I found when I would give the explanation of that identity, I would hope that people were excited by it because I wasn't, but I was just hopeful that at least they would find, oh, okay, that's great, sounds good, you know.
Of course,
Yeah,
it gave me, especially when I was traveling around and I didn't have another identity to wear,
yeah,
it gave me instant credibility.
right.
At least in my head. I don't know about
Sure.
theirs, but in my own head it gave me credibility.
Well, it
Yeah.
sounds good, right? I'm a military
Of
captain. I'm a
course.
corporate. I sold a company to a
Yeah.
Fortune 500. People love that, right?
Yeah.
The only problem was is that every time I said it, I died inside a little.
Uh,
It never was that feeling that I was looking for, and I think I became obsessed with this idea
yeah.
of success because I
Yeah.
thought when I would say those words, captain in the military, a Fortune 500 company, I would feel
Yeah.
good. And
Yeah.
I just would die a little. I just felt terrible.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Every time I said captain in the Air Force, I reinforced the steel-plated armor that I was wearing that kept me separate from what I really wanted to experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was the biggest impulse for you then that finally pushed you out?
Yeah. So I struggled and struggled, and I was, like we were saying, so completely connected to the stock options and
Mm,
the identity of it, and having no identity, and stepping out of this position where I'm getting so much social reinforcement that it's the right thing to
yeah,
nothing, was such a big challenge. But I was so miserable that for me, the final moment came on an airplane with my brother, and I had rehearsed this conversation with him hundreds of times, the pros and the cons and why I could go and what I was thinking. And I just was thinking this is the most incredibly complicated decision known to mankind. And I said it to him, and he just looked at me. We're best friends and business partners. And he's like, you know, the world's a big place. And it was like, I just started sobbing. And I just started,
wow,
I'm like 30,000 feet in the air in this uncomfortable
wow,
airplane. And it was like
wow,
permission finally. I don't have
wow,
to overthink this.
right,
And
right,
I just made the decision in that moment.
wow,
I got to do this. I can't do this. I'm gonna die if I stay here.
yeah, wow,
So that was kind of my defining moment.
yeah. I'm gonna die if I stay here. Like
Yeah,
that's Yeah, I love that. I think it was Tony Robbins that first said, "We when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change, we'll
absolutely,
change."
absolutely. So that's exactly right. The I had all the things that I had made peace with to stay. They weren't working anymore. All my little answers. I set some goals that I wanted, and I met them. We sold the company, and now they wanted to do all sorts of other things I didn't want to do. I couldn't come up with another excuse.
Yeah,
And I agree. I think the pain has to get to a certain point. What does he say? The leverage, right, has to get high
right.
enough. Yeah,
Leverage. Yeah.
yeah. So, what about you? What was your moment?
Well, that's funny. I did, so I was essentially in the military for 10 years, including college and active duty. I knew the first year that I had to get out. I knew immediately that this was not for me.
Wow.
And yeah, I knew really quick. But, the pain wasn't that great because I was at college
Yep.
having fun. I was doing ROTC. It was just enough that, I was getting trained, but it wasn't my whole life yet. I was at college, I was at a regular college. I didn't go to an academy, so I was still having a lot of fun. But then I went into the actual military and they owned me for 5 years. They had me. And so I knew the day was coming. I counted the days
Mm,
till I could get out.
mm,
So for me, there was not even a choice.
yeah.
I was actually offered a job by one of the defense contractors I worked with, maybe Lockheed Martin. The big boss there said, "Hey, Bryan, when you get out, you want a job, come see me." You know, he probably would have paid me triple what I was making in the military, no way. Again, it was like what you said. That was to me was death.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
asking me to kill myself,
Yeah.
basically.
But that's so interesting because it's we're both having the same experience where culture keeps educating us around this idea, hey, there's money, there's shining objects, and it's going to fill
Right.
you up in some way. And
Yeah.
it's we rationalize, right? And um, Carolyn Mays talks about the inner prostitute, which I love, and it's this idea that right we sell ourselves out at this really deep level, and we all have it in us, right? But it's like how often
Of
do you listen
course.
to that voice? And
Well, one of the things that really occurred to me also was I really got clear about was here I had money. I like paying me triple what I was already making. So what?
yeah,
What does that get? I'm comfortable. I'm fine.
yeah,
And I'm miserable. So what I realized is that you can't pay me enough to be miserable.
yeah.
Like I just that really hit me hard.
That's a really
So
big thing to notice because I think a lot of people don't.
yeah,
They take the next big paycheck and they buy more stuff in the bigger
yeah,
house, and they think that that moment is going to come, and
yeah,
it doesn't. Right? I've worked with a lot of people that have millions, 10 houses, and it doesn't happen.
yeah.
Yeah,
Why do you think people stay there in that why do you think we stay there? I mean, look, I was part of me was I was legally bound to stay there. However, I'm also aware that I made a choice not to even begin fighting the. I believe that had I really wanted to, I could have gotten out of the military.
yeah,
But something in me stayed. It wasn't patriotism. I love my country. Don't get me wrong. But you know, there was some. What was it for you? What kept you there all those years?
yeah. I think it's back to that to the beginning of the conversation, the simplicity of the message I was telling myself. I'm a health tech entrepreneur, building a company, doing great things, helping people. Those are all really easy things to get your brain around. And
Mm,
if you haven't figured out what your passion is, or you don't have the courage really to follow it, then I think it's just easy to stay with these places.
yeah,
Following that little voice within you is so much more scary and so much
yeah,
harder to navigate. So, for me at least, and I think what I've seen with my clients is, um, I don't know, you being a lawyer, being a doctor, that's great if you love being a lawyer or a doctor. But
right,
we're sold pretty hard on military, corporate. There's these handful of things that are super acceptable in
yeah.
society. It's just it's easy.
You know what? As you're speaking, also what comes up for me is that there's so much certainty in all those things.
That's right.
The military basically told me what my next 20 years would look like.
Yeah.
And I am way too much artist to appreciate that.
Yeah.
Like like some people want that. Some people want to know what their next 20 years look like. They want the security of knowing that they're going to still have food in 20 years, which in this country is ridiculous,
Yeah.
right? But they are so that to me though, um, there was something about even if I knew I would just be in a few years, I didn't know what the alternative was. The alternative was kind of this blank canvas,
Yeah.
and that was almost too horrifying. And you actually, I think it might have been right before we started this conversation, but you shared something about that take stepping into that unknown and not really knowing what do I do now. So if I leave, well then what?
Oh,
There's this giant void there,
terrifying. I mean, terrifying. And even if you
right?
have enough money, I mean, it's
Right,
terrifying, right? So,
right,
it's not the money. Like people think, well, I would do it if I knew I had a year's worth of money. But it's just terrifying not to have, I think, that identity structure again, right? To know who
right.
you are, to know where you're going, to know
What you're
what's,
doing,
yeah, yeah. I think that's just so uncomfortable. I mean, sort of going back to Tony Robbins, but having that certainty again is a big deal. And so I think I
yeah,
started realizing that that's not something I had to have certainty in.
yeah,
That there's enough certainty in my life. The lights go on, the water goes on. I have hot water. We're healthy. Like it doesn't. I can have a little uncertainty in the path of my future in certain areas, because it's fun to watch it unfold. It didn't have to be scary.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that coming back to Tony, he talks about the six human needs,
Yeah,
right? And certainty is one of those six human needs, and it's the one that culturally we emphasize dramatically. Like we really emphasize that need over the others: uncertainty, significance, love, connection, growth, contribution. If you missed those, just rewind and play them. I'm not going to say them again because it was a lot. But certainty, we put so much emphasis. We're so afraid of the uncertainty of the world,
that's right.
which is the reality, and we do everything we can. That was the one thing that I really was clear about in the military. So, okay, you're telling me my next 20 years. I don't. What does that even mean? I mean, there's no guarantee for anything. We
Yeah.
don't know that we get tomorrow even. I went to a school, a healing arts school, and their school motto was, "We never know what comes first, tomorrow or our death."
Oh wow, that's good.
And and so, but so many of us holding on to this illusion of certainty, we're just playing for some long-term thing. Working alongside people in the government, in the military, there were government workers there that they were literally playing for retirement in 25 years. They were not happy. I could
Yeah,
see it,
yeah.
but they were willing to spend 25 years of their lives doing work that did not excite them because there was this guarantee at the end that they'd be comfortable.
Yeah, no, and that's where his six human needs are so powerful because, I mean, growth, contribution, when those become your top two human needs, it's incredible. And by that, right, you're growing from the space that you were meant to do. You're growing from your true passions and your gifts, and you're contributing from there, right? Because it's an endless
Right.
well when you're doing the thing that you love. So
Yeah.
you don't have to function from scarcity. You have endless amounts of um, ideas and thoughts and things you can do to contribute.
And I like what your brother said to you on the plane about it's a big world,
Yeah?
right? It's a big world because the one thing about taking that jump, making that leap, there's no perfect time to do it.
No. No.
There's not.
And that's what I was hung up on. I was trying to figure out, okay, if I do it like this and if I do it like that, right? Because I was trying to create that certainty, right?
Yes, right.
And
Exactly.
if we looked into a future crystal ball and we all knew that it was going to come out right, we'd all take chances, but then it wouldn't be a chance. So him just saying, hey, it's a big world, it'll kind of work out, was like, oh, wow, I am just, I'm gripping this so tight. And it's not possible to make a change and at the same time want that level of certainty.
Yeah. Yeah, and as we move into that void though, life life rushes to fill it. And I want
Yes.
to kind of switch into so now that having taken that leap, like what did we discover, right? What have we found out there? I mean, the first thing that I want to ask you about that though is, have you ever regretted it first? Let's just start there. Let's go right there.
Yeah. No, I mean that's part of the scary part, right? Is you can't go back, and so
Right.
that
Right.
plays deeply. And yeah, I regretted it for a while. I mean, there were days where I was like, "What was I thinking?" And I would go back and add up. Had I just stayed, I would have had this amount of money, and then I would have been set for life. And I would make this
Mhm.
argument in my head, who does this? What was I thinking? I had nothing to do. I'm home with a 3-year-old and I had no way to fill my days. And at first it was fun to,
Mhm.
have some lunches. I hadn't done that
Uh-huh.
for years and years. Like, oh my God, I'm lunching and doing yoga. Like, what have
Uh-huh.
I done to my life? I have no life. So yeah, it was like big
That's funny.
waves would sort of course through me. I'd feel good. I'd feel like I'd make peace with what I'd done, and then so the coursing fear would sort of blow through me in a moment out of nowhere.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But it would pass. And so,
Yeah.
I think the more I had some faith in that this was a good decision, even if I didn't know what I was doing, because I was enjoying, being home with my son, and that I didn't want to go back to that job in reality, that kind of
Yeah.
always helped. What about you? Did you?
And what I hear too, and what you're pointing at, and I think this is very common, is that we think having a job, being productive, is a measure of our human value,
Yeah.
and that's such a bullshit lie,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because now here you are spending time with your child, and you're
Yeah.
doing yoga, you're taking care of your body, and you're
Yeah.
enjoying your days, and there's something flawed in that.
Right, that's wrong.
Who's crazy here?
Totally. And that's what I had to get used to. I mean, that's a great point is I had to really get used to the idea that it's okay to take this time for myself. It's okay to
Right,
exercise and work out and
right.
not to feel like this is just indulgent and weird. I had worked 15 years. I had never taken more than a week off.
Yeah, yeah,
And even so, because it was my business, the phone rang 24/7, right? It
yeah,
was a joke. Like we'd go on vacation and there'd be a crisis no matter what, right? So,
yeah,
yeah, the fact that I would feel bad because I was just living a little bit,
yeah.
that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, that is. I think that that really points to something deeply embedded in our cultural narrative.
Yeah.
That anyway, but we'll just leave that at that for now. In hearing you, I've decided that you weren't miserable enough at your job to because I have not regretted for even a nanosecond leaving my position in the military. Um, it's not been an easy road for me. There have definitely been some hard times, but that I was so, and I'm not just going to blame the military. Maybe it was just kind of just the just it was the sort of the combination of everything of who I was at the time, of being in the military uniform, of just where my thoughts were. I mean, it's just sort of everything working together. I was so, I just was in such a dark place in my life. And you wouldn't have known that to look at me. I wasn't brooding all over the place and threatening to kill anybody. I mean, I just wasn't happy. I just wasn't, I could make jokes and I was there and I showed up and I did a good job and I got rewards and I got, I was there, I was present, I was doing it.
Yeah.
There's a reason I got promoted. There's a reason I was a captain and I ran a flight of a space, I ran spacecraft flight at Kennedy Space Center. I mean, it was, I was doing well.
Yeah.
But internally, I just felt so dead
Yeah.
that, I have never, even I look at some of my contemporaries that stayed in and they're lieutenant colonels now and colonels and they're making all kinds of money. They got two homes and they're this and that. But, they're good people. But when I spend time with them, I can feel, I can feel the, there's like what is the word I'm looking for? There's like an emotional,
Disconnect.
there's something that doesn't, I don't feel a relaxation in their bodies. I don't feel that there's a real joy and thrill in their living.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get, I don't want to judge them or get in, what do I know? But what I experience is just, I love how I feel in their presence. And I realize like, had I taken that path, I would have I could just, I mean, look at my body. I'm just tightening up.
You're just talking about it.
Just
Yeah.
talking about it, I stiffen.
Yeah.
And so that's just not a life that was ever willing to go back to.
No, it's interesting you say that. And, I guess I want to point out that you were asking about did I regret it? And I was thinking about the beginning. I was still so disconnected and so emotionally connected to the reasons that I was there, and I was so disconnected from my true
Mm-hmm.
self that I
Yeah.
was really good at convincing myself still that I
Mm-hmm.
should go back or maybe I made the wrong decision because I had played
Right,
that game for so
right,
long, right?
right,
And
right.
I had the benefit of going
Mm-hmm.
back into the building because we built the building for the company, so I own the building still. And I'd walk in and I felt like I hit this energetic wall of like hell for me. It was like my
Mm.
whole body would just like
Wow.
shrink. And I had noticed when I'd go back in, I felt so alive and I felt so big and so happy and so
Yeah.
joyful. And I was like, oh, this place is just like,
Yes,
suffocating me.
yes,
And
yes.
I would leave and I'm like, oh, thank God. Oh my God. And I drive home
Yeah,
like giddy. So I think that's
yeah,
really important for people if they're making a big change, that your mind can really do a number on you if you've been telling yourself the same lie for a really long time.
yeah. Yeah, and I had that experience going on to a military base about 6 months ago, where as soon as we crossed the threshold, I was riding with someone in the military, and the guard saluted. I felt like I needed to wear a space suit
Yeah.
so I could breathe with a hose to
Yeah.
air.
Yeah. And I think it's really important that, there's nothing wrong with corporate. And my brother adores entrepreneurship
Right.
and has continued on with
Yes.
a second company. And there's nothing wrong with military. It's just if you're having those sensations wherever you are,
Absolutely.
then that's a really big indication that you're might be in need of a change.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I'm glad you pointed that out because I don't want to make judgments about the military or about anything. It's just, this is about finding our own way,
Yes,
our
exactly.
authentic way,
That's right. That's right.
right?
Yeah.
So, you and I we've both had interesting journeys since. And I think, I mean, that might be for another conversation or another forum where people can learn more about the kind of the details of our journeys through our websites if they're interested. But I think to what and let's create this together. But what I'm thinking is maybe what can we offer back to people that are watching this and thinking again, wow, I'm either I just took the leap or I'm going to take the leap and I'm still, what can I expect out there? What they're still looking for certainty that we can't possibly give them certainty and they can't give it themselves and life won't give it either. But still to help people, to help support people in knowing that 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 it's okay to make that jump.
Yeah. No, it's a subject that I'm so passionate about right now. This is what I'm coaching on and sort of
Hmm.
living with my clients in my book, but for me the best advice that I can give in a short window is ask yourself what you want, truly what you want. And notice how quickly anxiety starts to fill up in your body, even at the mere idea of thinking about it. And then if you are able to say what you want, thinking about a plan to go pursue it, notice again how much anxiety, how much stress, how much pain shows up in your body, and see if you can catch the correlating thoughts that you're saying. I call them junk food thoughts, but I find with all of my clients, and I found this with myself, there's a very small set of sentences, three or four tops, that you are guaranteed saying to yourself every time you come near this question of what you want or
Mm.
planning what you want. And it's some limiting thing. I shouldn't, I can't, others will
Right.
think, it's crazy.
Right.
If those kinds of sentences are around your thought
Yeah.
process, you're definitely uh, onto something that you need to pursue. So try just playing. I make a rule with my clients, you're not allowed to do anything for a month. I'm taking it off the table. We're just going to play so that you can create some space to not feel so stressed and not feel you know, like the certainty and everything we've been talking about starts to plague you. So take out a journal, talk to a friend, whatever it is that works for you. Go for a jog. Just start playing with it, start talking about it and notice all those shouldn'ts and can'ts and others will think and see if you can replace that with, well, who am I talking about or who are those others and why can't I, right?
Mm.
Finish the sentences and see if you can look at it differently because that sentence or two or three is the thing that's standing between you and your
Mm.
dreams in my
Mm.
experience.
Mm. Yeah, that's powerful. That's really good. Um, that that one thing that people can do in conjunction with that also is um, something that another teacher that I really enjoyed calls following your highest excitement,
Yeah.
and that is just the simple. I think one of the great challenges and invitations of our time is, we're so caught up in the intellect. We worship the mind, we
Yeah.
worship the intellect, and we're so disconnected from the wisdom in our bodies, right?
Yeah.
And that, we could talk about all we could go a whole that's a whole world we could explore.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think one of the great invitations of our age is to drop into our bodies, to relax into our bodies and trust the wisdom
Yeah.
that our bodies know. It's like there's a subconscious, there's a wisdom that's beneath our intellect that knows this is not right for me. This experience is not like this. I feel heavy over here. This feels a little bit lighter,
Yes.
right? And trusting that. And again, when we're working, when we're doing work or even in relationships, but we're going in a direction that has been so heavy for so long, and that's all we know,
Yeah.
it can be very, and why would we do that? But because our mind tells us to.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
But because some thought, like what you were just saying, looking at the thoughts, looking at the things that you're saying, is some sentence, some direction in intellectually only. It's
Yes.
an intellect is telling you do this because it's going to get you that,
Yep. Yep. So if you
right?
can get past those sentences, and I totally agree, that is exactly what I would say for a next step is when you start to allow yourself the permission to talk about what it is that you want, yeah, if you're feeling light and excited, even if there's a little fear, you're definitely onto something. And
Right.
that's what I had to learn. I was completely disconnected, completely.
Yeah.
And, I think that's one of the biggest challenges too, right? You get so disconnected that you can't find the thing. So another option too is thinking about all the stuff you do for fun. And people said that to me, and I really discredited it. But your life is leaving you major clues. I
Oh yeah.
love talking
Yeah.
about this subject, and
Yeah.
I never thought I could make a career out of it. So,
Right.
find the thing that you're just doing all the time, and see if you can think of a way to earn a living. Or
Yeah, I think that thing of our mind telling us to do things and kind of moving in a heavy direction, and versus trusting the thing that's a little bit lighter. It's like, yeah, your mind will say do
yeah,
this because it'll get you the money and the security, but at what cost?
yeah,
At what cost? Okay, so you have money, but you know what? You know what that money is costing you?
yeah,
The way that you're doing it, and by following by it's costing you joy, it's costing you enthusiasm, it's costing you your relationships, it's costing you passion,
yeah.
right? It's costing you
Everything.
really being. It's costing you everything.
It is. It's giving you anxiety. It's giving you fear. I believe at some point it even can make you sick. I mean, it
Of
just
course.
weighs you down in the worst of ways. And it's so bizarre to look around your life. I, drove up to my 1920s colonial home, and I have the chocolate Labrador and the 3-year-old kid, and all the boxes are check, 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 check. And I just felt like, oh, just the weight of everything.
Mm,
And that's we're so confused that those check boxes are supposed to always bring that level of
right.
happiness,
Right.
but they don't.
Yeah, and following that highest excitement, trusting in that a little, even just a little bit at a time, even if it's just on our free time, right? If we're still kind of locked in a world and we're scared to leave, well, just following those highest excitements wherever we can, if it's
Yeah,
on the weekends or in the evening, and trusting
yeah,
what is the next thing that I'm being called to do? Is it take a yoga class? Is it journal? Is it write something?
absolutely. Small steps, right? Learn
Yeah,
how to connect back. I did yoga. Yoga
exactly.
helped me a
Yeah,
lot to connect to my
yeah,
body. I learned to meditate and do breathing techniques.
yeah,
That helped.
yeah.
Anything that brings you back to this space, this nonverbal space that doesn't seem like it's doing much of anything, but it's where all of your true feelings and passions reside. The brain just gives us the language for it, but it's
Right.
right in here where you've got to pay attention.
and
Yeah.
and and ultimately what I believe where I believe our mastery is when we are living genuinely mind heart connected, right,
Yeah.
versus all in the mind, which is where most of us stay,
Yeah.
right. Really living, I call it kind of I call it the merger of the magical and the practical, right. The practical mind, which will sell you out.
Yeah.
It will sell us out like that,
Yeah.
and everybody else to
Yeah.
get what it thinks it needs,
Yeah.
right? But then there's the body, which if we just follow that all the time, we the system that we live in, which does need money, it could also take us in a place that we ultimately might not be cared for. And I had that experience, and we've been talking for a while, so I don't want to go too much into all that. But I had that experience of just following the magical for so long and working with artists and that one day I did turn around and I was broke.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I was happier. I felt okay, but all of a sudden I can't go home and visit my family in on the East Coast. You know, there's things that I can't do. And it's like, well, so it's really it's about bringing the restoring balance between, you know, letting our brain, our minds be a tool of the wisdom in our hearts.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that is the thing that I don't feel like people talk about enough is there's a navigation there, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
it's a job, right? I think
Yeah.
of it as a daily practice, that your heart and your spirit are telling you something, you're listening, you're using the practical parts of your brain to navigate and find it in the world and test, is this right? And you're just back and forth all the time.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's something that you have to I think, practice and
Yeah.
cultivate. But once you find that rhythm, it gets easier and easier, and it just it's where everything works out. Too much heart center without any practical, and you know you're not going to get that far with it. So it's
You know, and you're right. It's a constant adjustment, a constant sort of uh, uh, I wrote a blog once. Leaping off of cliffs is a way of life, right? It's not like you just leap off the cliff and then you know the metaphor, you leap off the cliff and you grow wings and then you have them and now you're just flying all the time.
yeah.
No,
No,
no, it's a
no,
way of life. If you want to continue, right, growing and
no.
contributing, and it's like you constantly are leaping off cliffs all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, I found my passion now and I'm living what I love, right? Except
Yeah,
that it's still happening, right? It's like, well, where do I
right.
want to take it and which direction and you know, the nuance of it and navigating it and it's still hard. I still have to make sure not to sell out again. You know,
Yeah,
I've had options and opportunities and a dangling of a shiny object, and so yeah, it's it is not. Oh, I leapt into my passion space and I'm flying like a
right.
birdie.
Whee!
Yeah,
No,
home free.
no. No, but there's a laughter, there's a lightness, there's a joy in our presence, right? There's a, you know, and there's it's some days are difficult, but on balance, there's no way I would trade all of whatever it is that I had in the military, all that certainty and that so-called security, which even that could still be taken away from me in a like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
There's no way I would trade all of that for the exhilaration and the thrill of just being connected to my body, of
yeah,
being surrounded by like-minded and like-hearted people
yeah.
that are passionate about what I'm passionate about also. Right? Like you and me having this conversation. If I was in the military still launching satellites, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
No, absolutely. And I don't know how your experience has been, but you know, I haven't had any dread anymore. I mean, there
Mm,
is no heaviness. So even if it's hard, it's
mm,
never heavy.
mm.
And I think that is the part that makes my life so much um, higher value. You know, I'm having difficult days writing my first book, and all these different things are super challenging and hard, and there's frustrations. But I, I'm tired. I'm not miserable. I'm
Yeah,
stressed.
right.
I'm not heavy. Right? There's such a difference there. Have you had that experience?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we don't, as humans, we don't get to escape our shit. Like we still have to,
Hmm.
we're on our journey. We're on our journey of awakening.
Yeah.
And we've made very courageous choices and we have to keep making them. There are some times where my mind's thought, oh, just run back to safety.
Yeah.
You know, Richard Bach wrote an amazing book called Running from Safety.
Mm.
Richard Bach was the author, wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull, and just an amazing, kind of one of the early storytellers in the kind of the personal development movement. And running from safety, you know, I think we're always tempted to run back to safety or to take the thing that'll just immediately, it's sort of instant gratification kind of thing. But um, you know, really hanging in there and just following our truth from moment to moment to moment. And you know, my 98-year-old grandfather, I asked him, how did you know that you were on the right path in life? And he said, you know, you just know.
That's right.
And then I asked him, well, so how did you know if you were on the wrong path? And he thought about it for a second, and he smiled and he said, you just know that too.
That's awesome. I love that.
You just know. It's like the body just
It
knows.
does if you're listening, right? And so if you connect, then you just do know, And I love your analogy still of the bird because, people tell you you're supposed to find this blissful space and it's all just like some blissed out amazing experience and life is still hard. You still have a lot of difficulty.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
it just you feel good, like your grandfather said, you just kind of know you're good. It's all right.
And I feel like life is real. Life is more real. The conversations I have, the people I connect with, the work that I do is more authentic and real and meaningful and profound for me anyway
Yeah.
than when I was in a world that I was disconnected from.
Yeah. No, I couldn't, you know, after I left, my brother asked me to be on the board of his new company because I had the right resume and he needed a bank
Hmm.
relationship. So I went with him to Chase Bank to the top floor in a marble room and the waiters were coming and we were
Hmm.
supposed to put on the big corporate act and I couldn't do it. I mean,
Hmm.
I walked in there and I was making jokes and I'm
Right.
like, this isn't my space, right? Like, and he's looking at me because I'm not playing my role, right? I couldn't
Right.
get back in the corporate outfit and sit there
Right.
like the good
Yeah.
corporate girl. And he and
Yeah.
I had a whole, way that we
Wow.
did it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's so fun to be in your authentic space and to not sell out on that part of yourself. And I think once you commit to it, it's really hard to go back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's yeah. I whenever I have the thought of going back, it's like going back to prison. Really,
Yeah.
it really
Absolutely.
is.
It is.
It really is.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we wrap it up? Why don't we? This is it's always I love having this conversation with you, Laura, and I think we're both up to some really good work in the world, and if people want to learn more about what I'm up to, my website is bryanreeves.com, and we'll put all that information here. And Laura, why don't you please share again about your book and
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for doing this with me. I love chatting with you and hearing your story and talking about these important ideas. Yeah, I'm at lauraco.com, and my book, Emotional Obesity, will be out in January of 2015.
and I think if, for people that are watching this, if know that there is support for you. There's people like Laura and I that are available to help you. Both Laura and I are doing coaching and we're writing, and we've been through the journey that you're literally dying to go on, or maybe you're already on it and you're nervous or you're scared, or just it's just good to have support. I had a nervous breakdown because I had no support.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
I
know,
had to
I
do this alone too. It was really hard.
it took me years and I hurt myself in a lot of different ways. And I was young and it was a lot of other things. It was before the internet days, really before Skype and all that stuff. And, so I didn't know that there were all these amazing people out there that
Yeah.
I could connect with and communities. And so, just know that you're not alone.
Absolutely. And if I could do it again, there's so many great resources out there. There's so many great blog sites and people who have great tricks and tools. And it just didn't have to
Absolutely.
be, for me, it was a 3 year beat my head up against the same wall struggle. I almost opened up four more companies. I mean, it just, it can be brutal. So
Yeah,
absolutely. Find the resources that make sense and the people that really resonate with you.
right. Absolutely. Awesome.
Well, thank you
Thank,
so much.
thank
This
you,
was
Laura. This
great.
was great. Yes. Thanks so much.